Big things, big things popping out here in these streets. What's going on, peeps? We are back for another week on the Conscious Approach channel. My name is JV Wins. That's Dogon SS. You already know what it is. We do this each and every Tuesday. Thank you for joining us on the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Appreciate everybody for watching. Appreciate everybody for joining the tribe, the Conscious Approach channel tribe. Before we get into this week's topics, disclaimer, the way I always like to say, man, if you like the commentary in our videos, if you appreciate what we do on this channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. Make sure that you are a subscriber so that you can get the notification whenever new content is published to the channel. We surely appreciate it, and we surely appreciate you joining us along for this wild and crazy ride as we talk about all sorts of fun, hot societal topics going on, percolating in these streets. So, yeah, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, let us know what you think, leave a comment, tell us what we're going right, tell us what we're going wrong. As we always like to say, we don't run a cult around here. So if you disagree, that's actually preferred because we kind of like to bounce around different ideas as long as it is not of the troll variety. We do have troll detection software. So if your comment is of the troll variety, we will not respond. As a matter of fact, we will ignore it. But
we get hostile, and we get hostile too.
yeah, and we will leave it up because people need to see what an example of trollish behavior looks like, because there's no room for that out here. So with that out of the way, man, we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. First up, we're gonna talk about Kenya Barris. For anyone who is not a follower, or not necessarily a follower, but not familiar with Kenya Barris's work, he is a Hollywood director, producer, writer, all of that good stuff. He is the person who is the arbiter of those Blackish shows, Blackish, Mixish, Grownish, all of these shows. There's also a show that he has on Netflix with Rashida Jones, which I cannot recall off the top of my head, but it's similar in tone, featuring just family dynamics and all of that kind of stuff. But he is also the co-writer, I believe, along with actor Jonah Hill, on a movie that just debuted on Netflix called You People. Basically, it's a comedy movie that features mixed race relationships, and there's a dynamic. It's what's that chick's name? Nipsey Hussle's baby mama. She was in that movie ATL.
London.
Lauren London. There you go. Lauren London plays the daughter of Eddie Murphy and Nia Long, and Lauren London gets with Jonah Hill, and his parents are played by David Duchovny, who is Mulder from the X-Files for all of you older folks out there, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who was on Seinfeld. And Jonah Hill's family is Jewish, Lauren London's family is Muslim, and so all sorts of comedic hijinks ensue in this movie, You People. And it's supposed to be a running commentary on mixed race relationships in this current climate, which can get real sensitive when it comes to racial dynamics and all of that kind of stuff. We can get into our individual assessment of the movie if we like to, but the point of this particular video is, in light of the You People movie, Kenya Barris as of late has been garnering, I don't know if criticism is the right word, but people have been calling him like obsessed with mixed race relationships and obsessed with swirl-ish dynamics and relationships, because seemingly there's a fair chunk of his content that features family with mixed race, dynamics, a black man, a white or biracial woman, and then the biracial kids and all of that stuff. And so people are, kind of critiquing Kenya Barris on that, saying that he has a fetish for mixed race relationships and all of this kind of stuff. And so he was recently on Sway in the Morning to dispel any of that. So we are going to talk about that and talk about just, this particular situation as a whole, how valid it is, whether it is a criticism, and, how much sense that it makes. So this particular article we got from Bossip, it says clarification-ish. Kenya Barris responds to claims he's obsessed-ish with swirl-ish storylines. So it says Kenya Barris is finally setting the record straight on whether he has a fetish for centering mixed race characters in his projects after he was biracial-ish blasted. Earlier this month, film critics lit into Barris after the trailer for his Netflix rom-com You People Hit the Internet. The funny comedy, which stars Jonah Hill and Lauren London, follows Hill's awkward character Ezra Cohen as he tries to win over the parents of his black girlfriend named Amira. After news of the movie made headlines, some angry Twitter users lit into Barris, noting how interracial relationships and biracial characters are always centered in his storylines. A few people accused the famed film writer of having a quote fetish and an unhealthy obsession with biracial people. So you can see here's one of those Twitter comments.
Fetish.
Uh, it says one thing for certain, two things for sure. The sun rises in the east, the earth is round, and Kenya Barris will never stop beating you over the head with his biracial obsession.
Oh.
Nah, I think it's kind of strong there, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. So Kenya Barris responds to biracial backlash. Well, this week during an interview on Sway in the Morning, Barris finally addressed the criticism. When asked if he had a fixation with mixed race storylines, or rather mixed race stories, the Black-ish and Grownish creator sarcastically said, I do, I really do. Barris 48 continued, it's crazy. It happened because I did a show about my family that I'm super proud of and Blackish. My wife's biracial. The kids look like my actual kids. Then there's a spinoff with Yara, who's amazing, which I'm super proud of that spinoff. There's a spinoff about the mom character's life, which was based around my kid's mom's life and the things she went through. So we'll go ahead and play this snippet from his response on Sway in the Morning. This was from a clip from the Instagram post that was posted to that Bossip embedded onto the website. So we'll look at this and then we'll talk about this situation.
I was very surprised to see a group of people online that saw the trailer and felt like Kenya Barris has a fixation on mixed race storylines.
I do. I really do. No. I feel
What's that about?
I feel like it's crazy. I feel like it happened because I did a show about my family that I'm super proud of in Blackish. Mm-hmm. My wife's biracial. The kids look like my actual kids. But, and I took it. And then there was a spinoff with Yara, who's
our girl.
Who's, amazing, which I'm super proud of that spinoff. There was a spinoff about the mom character's life, you know what I'm saying, which was based around my kid's mom's life and the things that she went through. And then I did a show on Netflix that was still based like me playing me,
Black as fuck,
with Rashida, who's biracial. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
You know but that's all based on my family. And if you go outside of that, people don't remember like it's Intergalactic, it's Shaft, it's Coming to America, it's The Game, it's Girlfriends, it's Girls Trip, it's I will go head to head. I'll do a versus for who's black. You know what I'm saying? Like who's, you know what I'm saying in terms of like who's put up black shit. You know what I'm saying?
You and Spike.
I'll go against anybody. I really mean that. I really mean that. Like I feel like my career has been dedicated to us.
All right, so basically he said, put some respect on my name. He said, check the receipts on that. But so there you have it. Do you believe that any of this is valid? Does Kenya Barris's content strike the iron while it's hot? And does he have a mixed race fetish or obsession?
Fetish is a strong word for sure. Obsession is also a strong word. I would say this, that when dealing with Hollywood corporate interests, the best way in order to carve out a lane in that industry is to create something that hasn't been created before. And this guy found a niche. He found a niche, or niche for you niche people. I can't stand you niche people. I don't know what y'all problem is, but you need to stop. And so yeah, so he found himself a little niche. He carved himself a little nice pigeonhole, little Tyler Perry little window of this is what I operate in. I do biracial stuff. Get like me. There's a lot of biracial relationships out there, a lot of mixed kids out there, and they don't have identities as far as the children once they come out, because this country is so torn. You're either black or white, and when they are hearing these dynamics of the oppressor versus the oppressed, and I have both of them as my parents, which side should I side with? Who should I believe? Who should I empathize with? So on and so forth. So then there's this thing of trying to be black enough when you're around black people and try to be white enough when you're around white people. And they just grow up lost. So mixed kids in this culture built on racism and racist rhetoric, they lack identity, a lot of them. And it's very sad. So they didn't have any sitcoms or any television shows that reflected the lifestyle of people who go through these scenarios. So I believe it does resonate to a population of Americans here who do endeavor with these dynamics. There's a man who's qualified enough because he has a wife who's biracial herself, and they deal with these interpersonal dynamics when they're living in America. Then what better person who's also a writer or a producer to come out with content that's in this niche lane? So I don't fault him for it. I have other takes on this, but initially, a guy who's coming from the background that he's coming from, seeing the way that he's seeing things, and also acknowledging the mixed kids or biracial kids, however you like to call it, that are living in America who are struggling with identity issues themselves. So maybe they do want to see something on TV that actually reflects them and their upbringing. So how about you, bro? How do you feel about this little scenario here?
Yeah, I guess everyone is in need of representation, right? We need more black representation, more LGBTQXY and ZOP, OPP, yeah, you know me, representation,
Yeah.
and more female representation, more everything representation. So even more mixed race representation. Um, yeah, I think obsession is also heavy-handed. I think fetish is also heavy-handed. I think the criticism against him is heavy-handed. If you have an issue with mixed race relationships being portrayed in entertainment, then my recommendation is that you address the source of mixed race relationships and not attack a byproduct of those dynamics, which is what I would, qualify. Which is what I would file Kenya Barris under the umbrella of a byproduct of whatever it is that people who would criticize him for this stuff actually have a problem with. I've just never been a fan of going after people who are just sort of trying to create something artistically that speaks to what resonates for them personally. And whether you like it or not, that is a representation of his life. He does have a biracial wife, or at least he had, because I think that they are separated or trying to get divorced, or I don't know. But that is, he did. That was his family dynamic, and he does have the biracial children and all of that stuff. So it isn't inauthentic in the sense that he's making something up, but there's nothing that actually resonates with him individually. And so my rule when it comes to stuff like this is as long as it's not contrived. Now, granted, it's Hollywood, so there is going to be some embellishment going on with pretty much anything that gets put out for mainstream consumption. But within that context, so long as it is relatively authentic in terms of this is actually what this guy's life was like, I don't really have an issue with it. I'm more so just looking at the people who are criticizing him. So you say that he has a fetish and that he's obsessed with it. Okay, well, what kind of content do you want him to make? Like if you think that he is laying it on thick with the mixed race stuff, what do you want him to do? You want him to make more drug jail guns drug shows? I think we got enough of those. You want him to make more shows with black men wearing dresses? I'd say we have enough of those. You want him to make barbecue shows, family cookout shows? I think we have enough of those. So, what form of entertainment do you want him to make if you have an issue with the biracial stuff? Like, I think people just like complaining for the sake of complaining. That's what I think. I think people wake up in the morning with a natural axe to grind because their life is abjectly miserable. And so they exact their misery upon the world by criticizing the first thing that triggers them. And since they're so easily triggered, it's like, oh, biracial TV show. Let me get triggered and criticize that. But no one's going to criticize 50 Cent for repeatedly making shows that depict black people in prison and jail and selling dope all day. Now, granted, those aren't, even though I do personally think that the majority of the most highly consumed forms of black entertainment are shenanigans like BMF and all of the different permutations of the Power universe. Hell, Power now has its own universe. How ridiculous is that? There's now
Wow.
3 different Power shows going on at the same time that all deal with the same team, that all deal with the same thing. Black people running up and shooting each other, shooting on ops, selling dope, going to prison, going to jail. Like, it's a rinse and repeat thing. So unless you're going to offer up an alternative, I would suggest that you stop complaining and just enjoy the biracial content that Kenya Barris puts out. Otherwise, be constructive and tell me what kind of entertainment do you want him to produce? What do you want him to make? You want him to do the Tyler Perry stuff, Medea stuff, family reunion shows, funeral movies? Is that what you want him to do? Like, offer up some critiques here instead of just complaining because this guy decides to make shows featuring biracial family dynamics, which is an ancillary representation of his actual experiences. I can't necessarily fault him for that. And for the record, if I'm going to, in the interest of full disclosure, I personally do not get as um, bothered, if that's the appropriate word. I don't get as bothered with the advent of mixed race relationships because I kind of view it as, in 2023 progressive America, people exploring more options and becoming more comfortable with doing that. But I also at the same time do not fault or criticize someone else who thinks differently, because I respect those opinions as well and I understand where they're coming from and I think that they're completely valid. But me personally, doesn't really trigger me all that much. And quite frankly, I would rather watch an episode of Grownish or Mixed-ish, College-ish, uh, Nail Spa-ish, whatever ish shows that this guy wants to keep coming out with, in lieu of, every time I put out Star, every time I turn my TV on and see a new black show debuting on Stars, it's got to do with a dance studio or drugs and dope and guns and shooting. So, if this is about diversification of content and you have a problem with what Kenya Barris is putting out, then give me a constructive alternative that he can be leaning into because you think that this is a fetish or an obsession. Otherwise, I would say keep the same energy. If you're going to have a problem with what people like Kenya Barris are doing, then I would say also have a problem with, what 50 Cent is doing or what these other producers in Hollywood are doing when they put these shows on BET depicting dysfunctional black families who are constantly backstabbing and double crossing each other and stealing businesses from up under one another's feet and having sex with their friends' spouses and all that other dysfunctional behavior. There's criticism to go around, to be sure. I would say just keep the same energy across the board if you are so inclined to jump to your Twitters to complain about biracial relationship content.
And if biracial content out there is devastating towards the black community, well, so is shooting black men on film. All right, and selling drugs to one another. I agree with you 100%. And when these things get recorded and placed out there, and for people to watch over and over again into perpetuity. Because who knows how long, this cycle will go on and how long this content will go on. But whenever we're always being depicted on TV dying at the hands of each other, or we have music where we're talking about killing each other, or, whatever, you're surprised when the world doesn't treat you with respect. And here you go supporting content that says disrespect me. We don't respect each other. So yeah, it's throwing stones and hiding your hand. It's the pot calling the kettle black. It's all the above. The irony here is just it's tearing me to shreds. But when dealing with corporate interests and things of that nature, um, I spoke about before here about masculinity being under fire, under target. Um, so also feminine energy is under attack, and I would just say overall um, culture uh, of people are under attack. There is no American culture. If you want to talk about westernization, commercialization, consumerism, burgers, fries, hot dogs,
Yeah,
if you want to call that American culture, that's not a culture.
exactly. And I
And
100% agree. I think that is American culture, is just stuff.
it's stuff,
Stuff is American culture. Yeah.
right? And so I do believe people's actual genuine cultures are under attack. So if you're Irish, your culture is under attack if you live here. If you're Italian, it's under attack. So when there's no culture, there is no people. There's no guidance, there's no direction. People just doing anything. And if the alternative, if what they're always given is consume, self delete, and do all this other crazy stuff, then people are just going to do that and self destruct and all the above because there is no culture that's holding them down. When you have television shows that are trying to recreate what American culture looks like, then you get TV shows that are showing modern families and how they deal with work dynamics, relationship dynamics, and all the above. Blackish is no different, and or any of these issues. This guy's just talented at what he does, and he fit a role into whatever scheme that they have. Whenever I watch Blackish, the parts of it that I did see, I laughed, I giggled here, I laughed there. It's funnier than I thought, but it still has this cringe, and I don't want to. But
Hmm.
still, it's I still think it's witty enough. It carries its own weight at times. So I really don't have a problem with that. Hell, this, like we said, this show's talking about killing people. So
Hmm.
a show where a guy's trying to raise a family the right way, I really don't see,
Yeah.
whatever. But I do, however, believe that there is an agenda out there to dilute culture in general.
Yeah.
And uh, whatever black culture is, because we've talked about here before, you talking about a genre of music? Is that what your culture is? Or you talking about a type of food? So that's your culture. So you're tied to food and music. That's your culture. Okay, got it. So black people, we still struggle with ours. There's still some things that we do carry that's outside of that we do deem as black culture. That's outside of those areas. So, and not all of it's bad. And so, but you do have to have a sense of heritage and pride.
I
And if
agree.
if you're a person of Italian descent, I would expect that person to have pride as well. And the Italian American woman and the black man, they should both have pride in who they are and where they're from. When they raise their kid, they raise their kid that you're both,
Hmm.
and so have pride in both. And so wave your African flags as hard as you wave your Italian flags, and vice versa. And if that's the thing, cool. But I think that what's going on here is that there's what I've noticed in interracial relationships is that there's an elephant in the room, because there's no, to me, not in all cases, there's an elephant in the room of there's not culture from each side. Each culture isn't being genuinely respected. There's still some type of residual, my people used to be slaves. I don't look at you like that, but your people, oh yeah, my people did that, but my people used to be slaves too, and and my people weren't owners, and it's all this other stuff. So there's shadow dynamics going on. And I've said this before about interracial relationships on here. If those types of things are ironed out and y'all all on the same page, I don't have any problem, because at this point, you're not gonna raise an animal crazy child. But when you had those things in the shadows, and y'all pretend to get along, then you don't raise a child with pride. You raise a consumer, meek consumer, American burger eating, hot dogs, fries, American flag. And so so my whole thing is I want strong cultural people. My issue with these types of shows in general is that, hey, we need a show. We need shows that do X, Y, and Z, that promotes X, Y, and Z, because there are agendas out there. And an agenda to me that I think's out there is the mixture of races. Why do I think it's an agenda? Not to dilute or whatever, because if I'm really so pro-black, well, once a black person has intercourse with another race of people, that kid becomes black. So it's not that I have any issue with stuff like that. I have a problem with the ignoring each other's culture and where each other is coming from. Because if that was actually a thing, then like I spoke about men and other things, if people were actually people and they actually respected their culture, they wouldn't tolerate the madness that's going on right now. So you can have your TV shows that's talking about interracial stuff, but I think that those things promote those things, so those conversations aren't had anymore. There's still some conversations that still need to be had. And I think that a lot of these interracial relationships sweep a lot of stuff under the rug, because if it didn't, I wouldn't hear about so many identity issues that I hear about from these kids who grew up mixed. Yeah. And the identity issues comes from the parents didn't give them an identity. Therefore, they didn't give them a culture. And that's a problem. So them TV shows where they're just trying to, mend in, trying to fit in, trying to be American, trying to be like the next person, trying to be, it's like, oh yeah, these are the dynamics that you deal with. But where in this, if they did do it, and I'm pretty sure they did an episode here or there, where there's just like, be strong, be firm in who you are and your culture and all that other jazz. So, it's a lot that plays into this, but I don't have an issue with it, because I've seen worse shows. I've seen worse writing, and I've seen stuff that I was actually pushing some wild agendas. This is an agenda, but I think that if handled the right way, it won't be a bad thing. So
and I've seen a couple of his stuff. I never watched Blackish really like that, or any of those other spinoffs, because I don't really watch network television, because it's just the most watered down, diluted form of Hollyweird that exists. I don't watch network television. But his show on Netflix with Rashida Jones, Black AF, they try to do all of that stuff that you just talked about, where there is this idea of, okay, yeah, we're a biracially constructed family in America, but let's try to maintain some semblance of heritage. They try to pull it off. How effectively they do is up to your individual interpretation. It is what it is. Some of it is cringe for sure, but at least there's an attempt. So like you said, and I'm lock in step with you, like I have a problem with And the thing about it is those children, it's like you said, like the mixed race children who are growing up with no identity to speak of, it's because they were raised by two parents who themselves lacked identity. So it's a
Exactly.
generational curse.
Right.
And so this kind of stuff has been going on for decades now at this point. And it's more prominent now in 2023 because the advent of interracial relationships from a social acceptance standpoint is more friendly than it has ever been. But it still is important for the individuals who decide to get into it, understand where they come from and raise the child to uphold both identities. That's 100% correct. And you start running into problems when that doesn't take place. But for me, the people who are criticizing people like Kenya Barris, they aren't even taking into account, in my opinion, the fact that he is at least attempting to do this stuff. They're just sort of blanketly blasting him for putting on the programming in the first place. And so to those people, I say, okay, well, what do you want him to do? Like, don't come out here fire and brimstone, bitching and moaning and complaining about everything. If you don't like this stuff that he's putting out there and you think that it's an obsession and a fetish, what do you want him to make? And like I said before, I sincerely hope that you're complaining just as much about the drugs, jail, and guns and prison shows as you complain about the mixed race shows. Because to me, if one is damaging, then the other certainly is damaging, if not more so. So, and there was one thing that you mentioned before that you said, and I also concur, where it's like, I'm all good with mixed race relationships myself, so long as the individuals talk this stuff out and have an action plan in terms of how we're going to handle some of this stuff and how we feel about that. Because you got to know where an individual is coming from. So if both people are on the same page and then y'all actually start raising families, it is what it is. But it's the lost souls and it's the lost situations that are problematic. But I don't think that Kenya Barris is portraying that in his programming, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that because I'm a fan of his. I actually think most of what he does is cringe personally, and I can't watch most of it. But I can at least be reasonable enough to say I think he's trying to make these things where these kids are being raised with some identity and then they have to deal with the challenges they're in as they grow up in westernized American culture. And I watched the You People movie. Ironically enough, I watched that movie a couple days ago. And personally, I thought the whole thing was cringe. I could barely get through it. I could barely get through it. And you have to watch it to see what I mean. It's absolutely cringe. The Julia Louis Dreyfus character is over the top and completely exaggerated and so incredibly cringe. I can't stand it. But I know what he's trying to do. He's just doing it in my opinion, an incredibly corny way. And you can critique the writing and the execution of the movie, but I don't know that you can just blanketly criticize him for having a fetish, because he is trying to sort of impress the value of being in these particular types of contexts with some semblance of heritage that is passed down respectively from the two parents that you have. And so at least he's making an attempt at that. I'm not going to all the way just hate on the man or shard on him for that. But I do think that, having said that, most of what he's done is cringe. I tried to watch Blackish, couldn't do it. It was too much. It's too much. And then those other shows, Mixed-ish and Grown-ish, and that movie on Netflix, is too much. The show on Netflix, to me, is cringe. Well, but I'm not going to criticize.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, but I'm not going to criticize him along the vein that he's got this obsession or fetish with something that he has a personal affinity with, because it is, or at least was, his actual existence. So he's not, coming out of the woodwork, living in this, Pan-African or Black African family with, Black African children and a Black African wife, but all of a sudden he wants to get in Hollywood and make biracial shows. No, that was his actual family construct. So why is it an obsession when he has an actual personal affinity with it? So I just kind of think the criticism is heavy-handed. And I can say that while at the same time saying not really a fan of his work, because I find it to be quite cringy. It is what it is. And I concur with everything that you said there. I do think that that's important. I think responsible people who know who they are, who want to go that route and raise, biracial children. If you do it the right way, it is what it is. But yeah, it's the lost souls that are an issue. And if that's what you want to critique, then fine. But that's not what's portrayed in his stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll say this: it's kind of like, well, I was trying to explain about corporate interest, the agenda, him, his circumstance. It was kind of it's a perfect storm. The reason why this guy gets, in my opinion, because I think people like his work and his series, but not to the point of him to get so many spinoffs. And if it's so cringe to me as well. So when it comes to, it's like, how are you getting so many gigs? How are you getting another show? And so the thing is that it's kind of like with Young Thug. So when Young Thug came out, and he was actually a man who wears dresses on his off time. It was like, wait, hold on. Let me get this straight. His name is Young Thug. Yes. He wears dresses. Yes. He sells drugs. Yes. He talks about killing people. Yes. And he's talented. People like his music. Yes. Let's sign him. And then so him wearing a dress is not a big deal to him. That's the lifestyle he comes from. But there's an agenda out there to push dress wearing. So the same thing goes here for this type of stuff, where this guy who's talented enough to be a writer, producer, or whatever, he comes from that background, wants to write stuff about this anyway, but then they see that there's whatever. And again, I think that the agenda comes from the angle of diluting culture and embracing American culture. And I don't think that if America was genuinely a melting pot, then it would allow people to be sovereign in their own heritage and their own whatever, and each person respect each person's thing or whatever. When I go to a Colombian restaurant, I'm Colombian that afternoon because this lunch is fire. And I respect everything that they got going on in there, and I go about my business. If he has a Colombian wife, Colombian kids, and they trying to run their own empire and run a business, I'm happy for them. So nobody can. So just because I have my own culture, don't mean I can't coexist with other people.
Right.
And so these shows promote how they want Americans to think. That's my problem. So I don't watch all of this stuff, but it shows people how to problem solve. And whenever the problem solve is an American answer, and it's just like, yeah, of course, there is no real solution here. So again, I don't watch his content, but again, it's cringe for a reason. And I think it's cringe because it's not good. And it's also cringe because who's buying this? And then so when those people who are watching, oh yeah, I love all the issues, and then that person's just a cornball. It's just like, why are you surprised? This person grew up watching this man's content. Hook, line, and sinker. So yeah, man, I don't have issues. Things can play out however they play out. At the end of the day, if you're consuming content in general, you do have to have a mind of your own. Turn on your filters. And if the answers don't jive with your worldviews, don't allow it to seep in.
Yeah, just don't watch it. Yeah, all you gotta do is just not watch it. It's that simple. But people just kind of watch stuff and then get mad about it or triggered. Don't watch it. But yeah, that Netflix show that he has on there, they try to pull it off, but it's just, it's just not. Watching it, I felt so uncomfortable watching that show, watching that movie rather. And it isn't because of the themes in it. It's because of the acting and the writing. It's just forceful, and it's just not. But I saw what he was trying to do because that's what they're trying to do in the movie. Lauren London's family, they're proudly Muslim, and so Eddie Murphy plays the dad, and he's wearing, he's talking about the history of his culture and people in the movie and all of that kind of stuff, and they have these contentious conversations. So I see what he was trying to do, but when you try to do that within a Hollywood sphere,
That's what I
it
see.
just comes
Yeah,
off to
see.
me as it just comes off to me as like, like
that
no,
exactly. How
yeah,
powerful can it be? How much can we get to the root with Hollywood as the answer? So it's not
right,
really
yeah,
getting to anything. It's just entertainment about the situation.
it is,
So
yeah,
yeah,
it
it's
is, yeah.
I
But
mean,
I don't know. I'll still say, in closing, I think that saying that he has a fetish or an obsession is a bit much because
yeah,
that is the man's life. Like, that's the man's life. So critique the work itself, that's fine. But to say him as a person, he has a fetish for something that is his life, to me doesn't make sense. Like if I am a professional basketball player and I go into Hollywood and I start making basketball movies, does that mean I have a fetish for basketball?
yes,
Like my
you're
life
sick.
and my reality was a basketball player. So
You're
to me,
sick.
that kind of stuff doesn't make sense, But it is what it is, man. Shouts out to Kenya Barris, man, a black man getting rich, whatever.
Yeah, man,
America.
get to
What
the
are you gonna
bag.
do? Yeah.
Get to the bag.
American westernized consumerism at its best.
Yes. Give me more.